I saw her foot rubbing his leg under the table, but when I followed them to the kitchen, I realized they weren't just cheating. They were planning a heist. I invited my ex-husband to dinner to meet our son's new girlfriend. I thought I was being a supportive mother, creating a modern blended family. But as I watched them across the candlelight, I realized the woman smiling at my son wasn't in love with him. She was in love with his father. And the betrayal I was about to uncover would destroy us all. Where are you watching from tonight? If you've ever trusted the wrong person, hit that like button and subscribe. You need to hear this story. The dining room of my estate was bathed in the warm golden glow of the crystal chandelier, casting long, dancing shadows against the silk wallpaper. It was supposed to be a celebration. My son, Leo, 22 years old and full of naive optimism, had finally brought a girl home. Sasha. She was stunning porcelain skin, raven hair, and eyes that seemed to hold too many secrets for a 20-year-old. My ex-husband, Richard, sat at the head of the table. Even though we had been divorced for 3 years, he still commanded the room with that effortless, narcissistic charm that had once captivated me. He was 50, but looked 40, wearing a bespoke suit that cost more than most people's cars. We were amicable. For Leo's sake, or so I told myself. "This risotto is incredible," Elena Richards said, raising his wine glass. The light caught the crystal, fracturing into tiny rainbows on the tablecloth. "You always did have excellent taste." "Thank you, Richard," I said, forcing a polite smile. But my eyes weren't on him. They were on Sasha. She was sitting next to Leo, her hand resting on his arm, but her body was angled slightly away from him, toward Richard. I watched closely. The scene felt cinematic, almost staged. The shallow depth of field of my focus blurred out everything else, the flowers, the silverware, leaving only the subtle micro-expressions on their faces. Leo was talking about his law school applications. "I think I have a good shot at Harvard," he beamed, looking at Sasha for validation. "That's amazing, babe," Sasha said. Her voice was smooth, like velvet. But she didn't look at Leo. She looked directly across the table at Richard. Her eyes lingered on his lips for a fraction of a second too long. Richard smiled back. It wasn't a fatherly smile. It was the smile of a predator recognizing another predator. He swirled his wine, holding her gaze. "Harvard requires focus, Leo. You'll need to make sure you aren't distracted." Sasha let out a small, breathy laugh. She reached for her water glass, and as she did, her foot brushed against something under the table, a tapioca. Je m'étais en support. I felt a vibration. The floorboards carried the movement. I dropped my napkin. "Oops," I murmured. I bent down to retrieve it. Under the heavy oak table, in the dim shadows where the light couldn't reach, I saw it. Sasha had slipped off her heel. Her bare foot was resting not on her own chair and not on Leo's leg. It was resting on Richard's calf, rubbing slowly upwards. My breath hitched in my throat. I froze, my hand hovering over the linen napkin. The air in the room suddenly felt thin, cold. The ambient sounds of the dinner, the clinking cutlery, the soft jazz faded into a dull roar in my ears. I grabbed the napkin and sat up. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I looked at Leo, my sweet, innocent boy. He was cutting his steak, completely oblivious. He thought this girl was his future. He didn't know she was playing footsie with his father. I looked at Richard. He took a sip of wine, his face a mask of calm composure. But I knew him. I saw the slight dilation of his pupils, the arrogance in his jawline. He was enjoying this. He was getting off on the thrill of disrespecting his son right under his nose. I wanted to scream. I wanted to flip the table and drag her out of my house. But I remembered the last time I accused Richard of something without concrete proof. He had gaslighted me. He had turned Leo against me, calling me paranoid and bitter. If I spoke now, Richard would deny it. Sasha would cry. Leo would hate me for ruining his big night. No. I needed more than a foot under a table. I needed undeniable proof. "Is everything okay, Mom?" Leo asked, noticing my pale face. You look like you saw a ghost. Mine, darling, I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, distant, mechanical. Just a sudden headache. The wine, perhaps. You should rest, Sasha said. Her tone was dripping with fake concern. We can handle dessert. Yes, lie. I'll help you clear the table. Richard offered. Standing up, Alina, go sit in the library. I'll make you some tea. Not an vacation. I watched them, the wolf offering to guard the henhouse. Thank you, I said softly. I walked to the library, my heels clicking on the marble floor. But I didn't sit down. I stood in the darkness of the room, leaving the door cracked open just an inch. From this angle, I had a view of the hallway leading to the kitchen. The lighting in the hallway was dim, casting long, moody shadows. I saw Leo go upstairs to the bathroom. That left Richard and Sasha alone in the kitchen. Outside these libel. I waited. Silence. Then I heard a whisper. It was too quiet to make out the words, but the tone was intimate. Urgent. I slipped off my shoes. I moved silently across the Persian rug. Approaching the kitchen doorway, I felt like a spy in my own home, the adrenaline sharpening my senses. I peeked around the frame. They weren't doing dishes. Richard was leaning against the marble island. Sasha was standing in front of him, painfully close. Her hand was on his chest, playing with his tie. He's so boring, Richard, Sasha whispered. He talks about law school like it's the only thing that matters. I miss you. Be patient, Richard murmured, reaching out to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. His touch was possessive, familiar. Keep him happy for a few more weeks, until the trust fund activates on his birthday. Then we can stop pretending. Alka. The trust fund. The realization hit me like a physical blow to the stomach. Leo's grandfather had left him a massive inheritance that unlocked when he turned 23 next month. They weren't just having an affair, they were running a con. Richard, who had blown through his own money, was using this girl to get to Leo's fortune. Sasha leaned up and kissed him. It wasn't a quick peck. It was deep, hungry, and practiced. My ex-husband and my son's girlfriend. I stepped back into the shadows, my hand covering my mouth to stifle a sob. Tears blurred my vision, turning the kitchen lights into smeared streaks of yellow. I wanted to rush in there. I wanted to kill them both. But then I looked at the family portrait hanging in the hallway. Me and Leo. If I exposed them now, Leo would be heartbroken. But if I waited, if I let them think they were winning, I could destroy them. The world. I wiped my eyes. I straightened my spine. The crying was over. The war had just begun. I installed hidden cameras to catch them cheating, but I uncovered a plot to fake a pregnancy and declare my son mentally incompetent to steal his $50 million trust. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the breakfast nook, unforgiving and bright. It illuminated every dust mote dancing in the air, every crumb on the table, and the flushed, happy cheeks of my son, Leo. He was pouring coffee for Sasha. She was wearing one of his oversized t-shirts, her hair tousled in a way that was meant to look effortless, but was likely carefully styled. Thanks, babe, she cooed, accepting the mug. I stood at the kitchen island, gripping the edge of the granite until my knuckles turned white. The image of her kissing his father in this exact spot 12 hours ago burned behind my eyelids. The nausea rose in my throat, bitter and sharp. Morning, Mom, Leo chirped, oblivious. Sasha was just saying how much she loved the house. She thinks we should host a graduation party here next month. The party, I repeated. My voice was calm, controlled, a perfect porcelain mask. Yeah, Sasha chimed in, smiling over the rim of her mug. Her eyes were predatory, scanning the room like she was measuring the square footage for an appraisal. Ideally, we'd invite everyone, including Richard. It's important for Leo to have both parents there, right? And, of course, I said, forcing the corners of my mouth upward. Richard is family. The word tasted like ash. After they left Leo to the library to study, Sasha to meet a friend, which I now suspected was code for meeting Richard Freeman. House fell silent, but it wasn't a peaceful silence. It was the heavy, suffocating silence of a battlefield before the first shot is fired. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I went to work. I drove to a specialty electronics store in the city, the kind that doesn't have a sign out front. I bought 4K pinhole cameras with audio capability and motion sensors. When I got back, I spent 3 hours installing them. One in the living room, hidden inside the smoke detector. One in the dining room, tucked behind the frame of the oil painting. One in the hallway. And the most important one, in the kitchen, angled directly at the spot where they had kissed. I connected the feed to a secure cloud server on my phone. My home was no longer a sanctuary. It was a trap. That afternoon, I had a meeting with Arthur Sterling, the family attorney who managed the Thompson Trust, the fortune Leo was set to inherit in 3 weeks. Old leather smelling of cigar smoke and expensive scotch. He had been my father-in-law's lawyer, and he was the only man in this city I trusted. Yansang. Jar Connor Voidatson Pierns. Thoroughly bet. Tapioca, his reading glasses. It's good to see you, but you look tense. I need to see the terms of Leo's trust activation, I said, skipping the pleasantries. Specifically, the clauses regarding spousal access. Arthur frowned. He pulled a thick leather binder from his shelf. It's standard, Arthur said, flipping through the pages. Upon his 23rd birthday, Leo gets full control of the principal. $50 million. If he marries, there's no prenup requirement unless he initiates one. Why do you ask? It's because I said, leaning forward, I think someone is planning a merger. No, Ninser. Arthur looked at me over the rim of his glasses. Funny you should mention that. Richard called me yesterday. Hey, my blood ran cold. Richard called you? He was asking about the competency clause. Arthur said slowly. He wanted to know what the procedure is if Leo were deemed unfit to manage the money. He suggested Leo has been acting erratic lately. I sat back, the air leaving my lungs. It was worse than I thought. They weren't just planning to marry Leo for the money. They were building a contingency plan. If Leo wouldn't give them the cash willingly, they were going to gaslight him, paint him as unstable, and have Richard appointed as his conservator. What did you tell him? I whispered, eggs. Curating it into the past with a fella and rekindled it, mature in a melody and a second for makes his next. Great George. Does work up for them to net to touch demand for Billy with the guess just a couple of other Miss Form. His clarity when the figure of Volker comforted the taste home. How's that wonderful when I has? If Richard is asking these questions, he's planning something. He needs liquid cash fast. His own real estate investments have tanked. He's leveraged to the hilt. He's desperate, I realized. And a desperate man is a dangerous man. Arthur warned. I drove home in a daze. The sky had turned a bruised purple, heavy with rain. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw a car parked near the garage. It was Richard's Porsche. He wasn't supposed to be here. Leo was at the library. I parked my car down the street and walked up the driveway, staying on the grass to mute my footsteps. The house was dark, except for a single light in the kitchen. I pulled out my phone. I opened the security app. The feed from Kitchen Cam 1 loaded. The image was crisp, high definition. Richard was there, and so was Sasha. They weren't kissing this time. They were arguing. I put in my earbuds and turned up the volume. You need to push him harder, Sasha, Richard was saying, pacing the floor. The birthday is in 3 weeks. We need a ring on his finger before the trust unlocks. If he's married, we can pressure him to invest in the joint venture. If he's single, he might listen to his mother. One kind. Richard, Sasha snapped. But he's clingy. He wants to talk about feelings all the time. It's exhausting. And Elena, she was looking at me weird last night. Elena is clueless. Richard scoffed. She thinks we're one big happy modern family. She's weak, Sasha. She never sees the knife coming until it cuts her. I stood on my front porch, the cold wind biting my face, watching the man I once loved call me weak. watching the girl my son adored plot his financial ruin. Let's just get it done. Richard ordered, make him propose, use the pregnancy scare if you have to. The pregnancy scare. A stolen. I nearly dropped the phone. They were going to trap him with a fake baby. I watched Richard grab Sasha by the waist. Remember the payout. 5 million for you. The rest for me. But only if we pull this off. I know, she whispered. Papers. I closed the app. I stood there for a long moment in the dark. Richard thought I was weak. He thought I was clueless. He had no idea that the weak woman was standing 10 feet away, holding the evidence that could destroy him. But I couldn't walk in there yet. If I confronted them now, it was just a video. They would spin it. They would lie. I needed to save Leo, but to do that, I had to let them think their plan was working. I unlocked the front door and walked in. Thing. Richard. I called out, my voice bright and cheery. Is that you? I heard the scramble in the kitchen, the sound of them jumping apart. I walked into the kitchen, smiling like the clueless ex-wife they thought I was. Richard said, smoothing his tie. He looked flushed. I just stopped by to drop off Leo's golf clubs. Sasha let me in. Oh, how sweet of you, I said. I walked over to the counter, right past the hidden camera, and poured myself a glass of water. I took a sip, looking at Sasha over the rim of the glass. You know, I said, I was just thinking about the graduation party. We should definitely make it big. A night to remember. Mind models. Richard smiled. I agree. Great, I said. I'll start planning. I looked at the reflection in the window. The camera was recording every lie. I wasn't planning a party. I was planning a funeral for their ambitions. He put the ring on his own finger to test the weight, thinking it was a gift for his lover, while I convinced my son to propose publicly so I could turn their engagement into an execution. 3 days later, the trap was sprung. I was in the conservatory, pruning orchids. The sharp snip of the shears echoed in the glass room. Leo walked in, looking pale. He was wringing his hands, a nervous tic he'd had since childhood. He said, his voice cracking. I need to talk to you. Something happened. I set down the shears. I knew exactly what he was going to say. I had heard the script being written in my kitchen 72 hours ago. What is it, Leo? I asked, wiping my hands on a towel. Sasha, he swallowed hard. She thinks she might be pregnant. She's late, and she's been feeling sick. I watched him, my beautiful, naive boy. He looked terrified, but also determined. He wanted to do the right thing. He was stepping into a cage, thinking it was a nursery. Oh, Leo, I said. I didn't have to fake the sadness in my eyes, though he misinterpreted it as shock. Are you sure? Pretty sure, he said. Mom, I love her. I was going to wait to propose, but if there's a baby, I want to marry her. Now, before the graduation party. I walked over and took his hands. They were cold. It mossum two bakes toe. If you love her, I said, forcing the words out past the lump in my throat, then you should absolutely marry her. You should make it official. Don't wait, Lavish. Leo exhaled, a massive weight lifting off his shoulders. You really think so? I thought you'd be mad. I thought you'd say it's too soon. Fish cost mind. Chocolate tapioca and bucker. And they're pure. I think I said, looking him dead in the eye, that you should give Sasha exactly what she deserves. I need to get a ring, Leo said, energized by my approval. I want to get something amazing, something worthy of us. Call your father, I suggested. He knows jewelry. He bought me some beautiful pieces once. He should be there. I wanted Richard there. I wanted him to stand next to his son and pick out a diamond for his mistress. I wanted to see if his conscience had even a single pulse left. We met at Van Cleef & Arpels that afternoon. The boutique was like a vault hushed, velvet-lined, smelling of money and cold metal. Britashem was already there, leaning against a display case, looking impeccable in a navy suit. When he saw Leo, he clapped him on the shoulder. A father, huh? Richard boomed, playing the role of the proud patriarch perfectly. Well, accidents happen, son. The important thing is stepping up. That's what Thompsons do. I watched Richard's eyes. They were gleaming. He wasn't seeing a grandchild. He was seeing the trust fund unlocking. A baby meant Leo would be tied to Sasha forever. A baby meant leverage. I want the biggest stone you have, Leo told the jeweler. Price isn't an issue. Well, technically, I have to wait 3 weeks for the trust to clear. But I'll put it on my card for now, Richard offered smoothly. Consider it in advance. You can pay me back when your funds activate. Though, of course. Richard was securing his investment. The jeweler brought out a tray of diamond rings. They glittered under the halogen lights. Cold and sharply called. Leo picked up a 3-carat oval cut. What do you think, Dad? Richard took the ring. He held it up to the light. Then, he did something that made my skin crawl. He put the ring on his own pinky finger, testing the weight. He looked at it with a strange, possessive hunger. He wasn't looking at it as a gift for his daughter-in-law. He was looking at it as a gift for his lover. Sasha loves oval cuts, Richard said softly. Leo frowned. How do you know that? The air in the room froze. Richard didn't flinch. He didn't even blink. She mentioned it at dinner the other night. Richard lied effortlessly. When you went to the bathroom, we were talking about fashion. Oh, Leo said, accepting the lie because the truth was too horrific to imagine. Right? It's perfect, I said. Stepping in. It's stunning. She will never say no to that. Leo bought the ring. $85,000. When are you going to ask her? Richard asked as we walked out onto the busy street. Tonight, Leo said. At dinner, duh? I interrupted. Both men turned to look at me. Not tonight, I said. Tonight is just a Tuesday. This deserves an audience. Do it at the graduation party next Saturday. All our friends will be there, the whole family. It will be the highlight of the night. I saw Richard's eyes narrow slightly. He was calculating. A public proposal locked Leo in even tighter. It made it harder to back out. Elena's right. Richard agreed. Do it at the party. Make a spectacle of it. Okay, Leo smiled, clutching the velvet box in his pocket. The party it is. I watched them walk toward their cars, the father and the son. One walking toward his future, the other plotting to steal it. I got into my car and checked my phone. The kitchen cam alert had triggered 10 minutes ago. Sasha was at my house, alone, based on Lyndon 50 Lordy about one of the Nietzsche kind. Sasha wasn't looking at baby names. She was on the phone, pacing my kitchen, drinking a glass of my expensive wine. He bought it, Sasha was saying into the phone. Richard texted me. 3 carats. No, I'm not pregnant, you idiot. I bought a fake test online. Yeah. Once the ring is on my finger and the trust fund clears, I'll miscarry. It's clean. I know, I'm going to be rich. I recorded the clip. A free progressed regional painful new officer Windows. Essentially, I had the plan. I had the confession. And now, I had the stage. The graduation party was in 5 days. I started driving. I had to meet with the caterers and the AV team. Shined. The gas transpiring. Especially the AV team. Because when Leo got down on one knee, I wasn't going to show a slideshow of his childhood photos, movie, a horror movie, and Richard and Sasha were the stars. The crowd gasped as the screen flickered to life, but instead of baby photos, they saw the bride-to-be kissing the father of the groom. Saturday arrived with a sky the color of a bruised plum. The air was thick, humid, and heavy with the scent of jasmine and impending rain. It was perfect weather for a disaster. My estate had been transformed. White tents dotted the lawn like silk clouds. Fairy lights were strung between the ancient oak trees, waiting for twilight to flicker to life. A string quartet was already warming up near the rose garden. their melancholic melody drifting on the wind. It looked like a wedding, and in a way, it was. It was a wedding of greed and deceit. I stood on the balcony of the master bedroom, watching the caterers set up the champagne tower. Every glass was perfect. Every napkin was folded. I had curated every detail of this execution. I checked my purse. The USB drive was there. It was small, silver, and cold to the touch. Inside were gigabytes of betrayal. The video of the foot rubbing, the audio of the fake pregnancy call, the footage of Richard trying on the ring. I took a deep breath, smoothed my silk dress, and walked downstairs. The first person I saw was the AV technician, a young man named Ben who was setting up the massive projector screen by the pool. This screen was supposed to play a sentimental montage of Leo's childhood photos, him riding a bike, him graduating high school, him smiling with his father, a moment of every part. I walked up to Ben. I made sure my back was to the house so no one could see what I was handing him. And spuikom and citra. But teachnen. Our exteens begin gold and at the cup thurwa. I not stirred and left. Basheen as I extent. I said softly, Slumgugam out to them. He looked up. Hi, Mrs. Thompson. Just running the sound check. The microphone is live. Change of plans. I said. I pressed the silver USB drive into his hand. Do not use the cloud file I sent you earlier. Use this drive instead. Ben looked at the drive, then at me. Is this the updated slideshow? You could say that I smiled tightly. It's a surprise for my son and my ex-husband, Ben said, plugging it into his laptop. When do you want me to cue it? When Leo gets down on one knee, I instructed. Wait for the ring to come out, then hit play. Asturngif to fushel prepio. Understand uprate. I walked away just as the first car pulled into the driveway. The guests arrived in waves of designer perfume and polite laughter. Friends, family, Leo's law school classmates, Richard's business associates. They sipped champagne and complimented the garden, having no idea they were standing on a minefield. Then, they arrived. Richard and Sasha. They came together, of course. Sasha was wearing white, a floor-length backless gown that hugged every curve. It was a bold choice for a girlfriend meeting the extended family. It screamed bride. She held onto Richard's arm as they walked up the path, her other hand resting protectively and theatrically over her flat stomach, the fake baby bump. Richard looked like a king returning to his castle. He greeted guests with loud, booming laughter, slapping backs and kissing cheeks. He acted like he was the host, like he still paid the mortgage on this house. Chida an ginno nigh and. Richard called out when he saw me. He walked over, dragging Sasha with him. The place looks magnificent. You really outdid yourself. It's a special night, I said, my eyes sliding to Sasha. You look lovely, Sasha. White suits you. Thank you, Elena. She beamed, oblivious to the double meaning. I wanted to look fresh. For Leo. Where is the man of the hour? Richard asked, scanning the crowd. The library, I said. He's in nervous. I'll go give him a pep talk, Richard said. He leaned in close to me, smelling of expensive scotch and deceit. Make sure everyone is gathered by the pool at 8:00. We want the lighting to be perfect for the big moment. Oh, it will be perfect, I promised. I watched him walk away to manipulate our son one last time. I went to the library. Leo was pacing back and forth, clutching the velvet ring box so hard his knuckles were white. He looked so young, so hopeful. Enough. Mom, he breathed when he saw me. I think I'm going to throw up. You're going to be fine, I said, walking over to straighten his tie. E6. Do you think she suspects? He asked. She has no idea what's coming, I said truthfully. Leo, no matter what happens tonight, promise me you'll remember that I love you, that everything I do is to protect you. He frowned, sensing the intensity in my voice. Mom, You're acting weird. Is something wrong? The cracking buggery. I cupped his face. This was the hardest part, letting him walk into the fire. Nothing is wrong. I lied. Go out there. It's time. We walked out to the garden together. The sun had set. The fairy lights were glowing against the twilight. The crowd had gathered around the pool, sensing that something big was about to happen. The champagne tower was glistening. Richard was standing by the screen, holding a microphone. He tapped it twice. Thump thump. The sound echoed across the lawn, silencing the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, Richard boomed, his voice smooth as silk. If I could have your attention, please. We have a very special announcement to make. He gestured to Leo. Leo stepped forward, looking terrified but happy. Sasha stood next to him, feigning surprise, her hand fluttering to her chest, when 3 egg-beaten whites, making sure with Lao were not damaging. We've aligned a pulsive eye. I moved to the back of the crowd, near the projector. I caught Ben's eye. He was ready. His finger was hovering over the enter key. Sasha, Leo began, his voice shaking. He turned to face her. Since the day I met you, my life has changed. You've given me a direction, a future. Sasha wiped a fake tear from her eye. Richard nodded approvingly from the side, looking like a director watching his masterpiece unfold. And now that our family is growing, Leo continued, dropping to one knee. The crowd gasped. Phones came out, flashes popped. Became croaked with a velvet box. The diamonds sparkled in the spotlight. Awesome. Will you marry me? Sasha threw her hands over her mouth. Yes. Oh my God, yes. She bent down to kiss him. Richard started clapping, leading the ovation. She said yes. Richard shouted into the mic, let's hear it for the happy couple. As Leo slid the ring onto her finger, Richard pointed to the screen. The typical tears of the understand. For not about when understand. Fremsh. Chocolate, Richard announced. Elena has prepared a little tribute to our son's journey. He looked at me across the crowd and smirked. He thought he had won. He thought the ring was on, the trust was locked, and the money was his. I looked at Ben. I nodded. Ben hit the key. The screen flickered to life. But it wasn't a baby picture of Leo. It was a grainy, high-definition video of my kitchen. The crowd went quiet, confused. On the screen, Richard walked into the frame, then Sasha. And then, the audio kicked in, loud, clear, unmistakable. Sasha's voice on the screen. He's so boring, Richard. He talks about law school like it's the only thing that matters. I miss you. Richard's voice. Be patient. Keep him happy for a few more weeks until the trust fund activates on his birthday. The silence in the garden was absolute. It was heavier than the humid air. Leo, still on one knee, froze. He looked at the screen. Then he looked at Sasha. Her hands dropped from her face. The shocked bride expression vanished, replaced by sheer, naked terror. Richard dropped his champagne glass. It shattered on the pool deck. But the video wasn't done. My ex-husband lay in a puddle of champagne and pool water, clutching the ring my son threw at him, while the guests live tweeted the end of his career. The image on the 20-foot screen shifted. The kitchen scene faded, replaced by a timestamp from just 4 days ago. The audio boomed across the silent garden, echoing off the surface of the pool. Sasha's voice, amplified and crystal clear. No, I'm not pregnant, you idiot. I bought a fake test online. A collective gasp ripped through the crowd. It was a physical sound, like all the oxygen had been sucked out of the yard. Leo, still on one knee, looked up at the screen. His face was a mask of confusion, as if his brain was refusing to process the data. Sasha's voice continued. Yeah, once the ring is on my finger and the trust fund clears, I'll miscarry. It's clean. I'm going to be rich. Sasha lunged toward Leo. Leo, baby, don't look at that. It's fake. It's a deep fake. Your mother made it up. But the video cut again. This time, it was Richard, standing in my kitchen. And Richard's voice, 5 million for you, the rest for me. But only if we pull this off. Richard snapped. Turn it off, he screamed, his face turning a violent shade of purple. He sprinted toward the AV table, shoving a waiter into the pool in his haste. The waiter splashed into the water, trays of champagne crashing down, but no one looked. Everyone was glued to the screen. Richard reached the table and grabbed Ben, the AV technician, by the collar, closed the feed. Richard roared, shaking him. Turn it off right now or I'll kill you. Get off him, a guest shouted. Ben, terrified, threw his hands up. It's locked. I can't stop it. I had instructed Ben to lock the laptop with a password, only I knew the second he hit play. Richard frantically started ripping cords out of the soundboard. The audio screeched a high-pitched feedback whine that made everyone cover their ears. But the video kept playing. The image of Richard kissing Sasha in my kitchen loop on the screen, silent now, but damning. Then, giant, high-definition proof of a father betraying his son. Leo finally stood up. He moved slowly, like an old man. He looked down at Sasha, who was clutching the hem of his jacket, sobbing. Her tears were ruining her makeup, black streaks running down her face. Leo, please, she begged. He forced me. It was all his idea. I love you, I swear. Leo looked at her hand, the hand resting on his jacket, the hand wearing the $85,000 engagement ring. He grabbed her wrist, not gently. You are not pregnant, Leo said. His voice was quiet, but in the sudden silence of the garden, it carried further than a shout. Down, Petra. You are not pregnant, he screamed. The rage finally breaking through the shock, he shoved her hand away. Sasha stumbled back, her heel catching on the paving stone. She fell onto the grass, her white dress staining green. Leo turned to Richard. Richard was holding a handful of severed cables, chest heaving. He looked at his son. For a second, he tried to put the mask back on. He tried to summon the charm. Tapioca pudding. Roll pudding in butter, with 3 tablespoons of cornstarch and 3 tablespoons of sugar. When done, remove about half and flavor to taste. Chocolate to apple and ichsud and stukers. 5 several castorchinas works on wheater castor rolls. Dutch. Can be to fly that is Peter below works amazingly. Skelfers rough me. Sir did see me. This is taken out of context. Your mother, she's sick. She's jealous. She edited this to hurt us. Was centered. Like took of peach the filibuster. We sheet that brawl being the wear. Impossible promanical. Where end to? Lant of albirritable. Into. Be all or her. You bought the ring, Leo said. What? Richard blinked. At the store, Leo said, his voice trembling. You put it on your pinky finger. You said she liked oval cuts. You weren't guessing. You knew. Leo, don't be ridiculous, Richard scoffed, trying to regain control. I was helping you. I'm your father. You're not my father, Leo spat. A father protects his son. A father doesn't sleep with his son's girlfriend to steal his inheritance. I did it for us, Richard shouted. Losing the facade. To save the family. The trust fund, you're too young to manage that kind of money, Leo. You would have wasted it. I was going to invest it. I was going to build an empire for you. And, for me, Leo laughed. A dry, broken sound. Or for the debt collectors calling your office. The crowd murmured. The secret was out. Richard's financial ruin was now public knowledge. Richard's eyes darted around the garden. He saw his business partners whispering. He saw the socialites looking at him with disgust. He saw his reputation incinerating in real time. He looked for a target, and he found me. I was standing by the rose bushes, watching shows. Didn't take Fjellner Techuli. You did this, you venomous witch! You ruined everything! He started charging toward me. I'm gonna kill you! He screamed. 2 of Leo's law school friends stepped in front of me, blocking his path. One was a linebacker-sized guy named Marcus. He shoved Richard back hard. Stay back, Mr. Thompson Marcus warned. Richard stumbled, losing his balance. He fell backward, tripping over the same cables he had ripped out. He landed hard on the pool deck, his expensive suit soaked in spilled champagne and pool water. He lay there, gasping for air, looking up at the night sky. The video on the screen flickered and finally died, leaving the garden in semi-darkness. But the damage was permanent. Sasha was still on the ground, sobbing into her hands. Richard was on his back, a broken man in a wetsuit, and Leo was standing alone in the center of the chaos, the ring box in his hand. He looked at me. His eyes were filled with pain, but also with clarity. The veil had been lifted. He walked over to Sasha. She looked up, hopeful for a second. Leo, she whispered. Leo reached down. I thought he was going to help her up. Instead, he took her left hand. He slid the ring off her finger. This, Leo said, holding up the diamond, was bought with my father's credit card. I think he should keep it. He walked over to Richard, who was trying to sit up. Leo tossed the ring. It hit Richard in the chest and bounced onto the wet concrete. Happy anniversary. Dad, Leo said, you two deserve each other. Leo walked over to me. He took my arm. Mom, he said, his voice steady. Let's go inside. I think the party is over. I think you're right, I said. We turned our backs on them. Behind us, the guests were already leaving, phones out, typing furiously. By morning, everyone in the city would know. Richard and Sasha were left alone in the ruined garden, surrounded by broken glass, a dead screen, and the wreckage of their own greed. But as I walked Leo into the house, I knew the war wasn't quite over. Social ruin was one thing, but Richard had tried to steal $50 million, and Arthur, our lawyer, had been watching the live stream I sent him. The legal hammer was about to fall, and it was going to hit harder than any video. He begged for a second chance as the elevator doors closed, but we left him in the lobby, a man who gambled his son for a fortune and lost both. My ex-husband thought he could steal my son's $50 million trust fund by sleeping with his girlfriend. He thought he had the perfect plan to manipulate us all. But today, standing in the lawyer's office, he's about to realize that the bank of betrayal is officially closed. You won't believe how satisfying it is to watch a narcissist lose everything. The morning sun rose over my estate, illuminating a battlefield of soggy napkins and broken champagne flutes. The screen that had exposed Richard and Sasha's affair stood dark and silent by the pool, a monolith to the previous night's destruction. While the cleaning crew swept up the shards of glass, I sipped my coffee, finally feeling the weight lift off my chest. Richard had spent an hour pounding on my front door last night, screaming for a chance to explain, until the police escorted him off the property in his wet, ruined suit. Sasha hadn't even waited for the cops. She had fled over the garden wall, like a rat escaping a sinking ship, leaving her high heels behind in the grass. 2 weeks later, the air in Arthur Sterling's law office smelled of old money and finality. It was Leo's 23rd birthday, the day Richard had been salivating over for years. The day the trust fund unlocked. But as the heavy mahogany door opened, Richard wasn't walking in as a partner. He wasn't walking in at all. It was just me and Leo. Tapioca with cons formed. The naive boy who had been ring shopping with his father was gone. In his place sat a young man in a sharp charcoal suit, his jaw set with a quiet, hardened resolve. He didn't look like a victim anymore. He looked like a CEO. Arthur slid a stack of documents across the desk. Happy birthday, Leo, he said. The principal is yours. $50 million unencumbered. No conservator required. Leo picked up the pen and signed his name with a flourish that sounded like a sword sheathing. Teachin. There is one other matter, Arthur said, peering over his glasses. Your father has been calling the office incessantly. He claims he is owed consulting fees for managing your portfolio. He also wants reimbursement for an engagement ring. $85,000. Leo laughed. A cold, dry sound that chilled the room. Hammininaretti, you are catalog cult, and Bailey Craft affiliations coming out. We walked out of the office into the marble lobby, and there he was. And Richard. He looked like a ghost of his former self. His suit was wrinkled, his hair unkempt, and his eyes were bloodshot from sleepless nights. The scandal had incinerated his reputation, his investors had fled, and he was radioactive in the city. When he saw us, he scrambled up from the bench, desperation radiating off him in waves. Leo. Elena, Richard pleaded, rushing toward the elevator. Please, just give me a minute. Leo didn't break stride. He pressed the elevator button, his back turned to the man who had betrayed him. Lightyear, son, Richard begged, his voice cracking. You have to understand. I was desperate. The market turned on me. I did it for the family, to secure our future. Leo turned slowly. The silence in the lobby was deafening. He looked at his father with eyes that held no anger, only pity. You didn't do it for the family, Leo said calmly. You did it for yourself and your father. Richard shouted, grabbing Leo's sleeve. I raised you. Does that mean nothing? I have nothing left, Leo. Sasha stole my watch collection before she skipped town. I have legal fees, just a small loan from the trust. You won't even miss it. Leo looked down at Richard's hand on his sleeve. He brushed it off as if it were a speck of dust. You wanted to teach me about business, right, Dad? Leo asked. You told me never to invest in a sinking ship. The elevator doors dinged open. Leo stepped inside. I followed him. Elena, you cheered, turned to me, wild-eyed. Talk to him. Tell him. We have history. I looked at my ex-husband one last time. I remembered the gaslighting, the manipulation, the foot rubbing under my table. Weren't that counsai? We don't have history, Richard, I said, pressing the button for the lobby. We have a closed file. The doors slid shut, cutting off his plea mid-sentence. As we walked out to Leo's car, the city air felt cleaner. Lighter, Leo loosened his tie and started the engine. Thanks, Mom, he said softly, looking at me, for saving me. Proud to be on my sunglasses. A mother always knows, I said. We drove away, leaving Richard Thompson behind on the sidewalk, a man who had gambled his son for a fortune, and ended up with neither. If this story of justice served cold resonated with you, please like and subscribe. And remember, trust your instincts. They see the betrayal your heart tries to ignore.